Hi everyone, it's Alexa. Welcome back to Digital ELA Lot. Today we're going to go over some of the questions of the last test that we did again, and we're going to work specifically on excerpts from Research Riddle Resolved, which is on page 72 to 75. So if you haven't done that, do that now. We're going to go over a couple of the questions and a couple of strategies for these science-y passages. Okay, the first question we're going to go over is question 26, and I asked, the phrase, quote, evolutionary DNA tapestry in paragraph 3 conveys the idea that the platypus. And so for these type of questions, we're going to try to identify what it is. And this one is a function question. So for function questions, we want to see like how would the passage be affected if this were taken away? Because it's asking specifically what this quote does for the entire passage. So as we go through the answer choices, we're going to use that strategy. So choice E, we should read it. We said, has a rich and diverse genetic history linked to reptiles, birds, and other mammals. So it's kind of asking like what evolutionary DNA tapestry means. And if we look at the word evolutionary, that means, have you guys ever learned about evolution in time? It means throughout times, different animals have developed and different species has developed. And so it's throughout history. And so here it says genetic history, which is similar to what evolution means. And so this is kind of explaining what this quote is doing for the passage. And again, it mentions reptiles, birds, and other mammals. And if we look in paragraph 2, they mention the same exact animals. And so it that quote is representing what in the line said in paragraph 2 as well. So E would make sense, but let's look at F. It says that the platypus was able to develop its mammalian and reptilian traits at different points in time. So if we look at this phrase, it's 3 words. It says evolutionary DNA tapestry. And so nothing here does it really talk about different times. Evolution is, changes over time, but this answer choice talks about different traits developing at different points in time, which is not, this phrase does not express at all. So we can get rid of that option. Choice G says that the platypus continues to be the best resource for studying the evolution of animal genomes. This is a trick for all questions, but it uses an extreme. It says the best resource, and typically the answer choices that say it is the best are not the correct answer choices. The only exception is if it's said directly in the text that the platypus was the best resource, and it doesn't say that. And so that's kind of a hint that we could cross that one off, but definitely that is not what evolutionary DNA tapestry, that one specific phrase, does for the entire passage. And then choice H, kind of similar, it says that the platypus is especially useful to researchers because its genes have never been altered. That is not true. It doesn't say in the passage that the genes have never been altered, so we can cross that off. Make sure to go back to the passage and make sure you have an understanding of that so you can cross those off really easily. So we can go back and it says choice E, which says that the platypus has a rich and diverse genetic history linked to reptiles, birds, and other mammals. So just to recap, this question is asking what those 3 words, evolutionary DNA tapestry, do for the entire passage and what it means in general. So it's a function question, but it's also kind of a definition question. And answer choice E represents the definition of evolution and DNA and all that. Okay, question 29 says the details in paragraphs 12 to 14 about the platypus's different abilities convey a central idea of the excerpt by. So this is a function question. It's asking what these details about these platypus's different abilities, what those details do and help to support the central idea. So that's where we're going to have to show. One of the answer choices is going to say how these details are used to support the central idea. Okay, so now that we understand what the question is asking, let's look at answer choice A. It says, by showing that the platypus has a gene that allows it to produce nutrient-rich milk as humans do. So through all these answer choices, we're going to ask ourselves, does this convey a central idea? And nowhere in this answer choice does it mention a central idea. This is just a very specific detail as well. And so it doesn't explain kind of the broader picture. It kind of quotes the detail that was mentioned in paragraph 12 only. And then we have answer choice B, which is kind of similar. It says, by proving that the platypus, whose DNA is made up of DNA from several other species, has developed venom to defend itself. So again, you don't even have to understand what the central idea is, but this question isn't reflecting on a central idea. It is, again, talking about a detail. So now that we understand that we have to look for something that reflects a central idea, these really specific detailed ones are not going to be the best choice to do. So we can keep on looking. Okay, now choice C says, by suggesting that the platypus, while gaining traits in common with mammals and reptiles, has lost some bird-like traits. So again, we're going back to the central idea. And if you have already written one down, which we have been telling you guys to be doing a while as you read, you may see that this doesn't necessarily match it. Even though it does talk about a broader idea, this in choice C, it's saying that the central idea is that it lost bird-like traits. And if we look at the entire passage, the name of the passage, all of the things that it's proving, it's more so talking about the platypus's evolution and how it, in its history, which includes birds, reptiles, and mammal DNA. So that has been kind of the main idea of the passage. This is more of a specific thing as well, which we're looking for broad. And then choice D says, demonstrating that the platypus has a rare evolutionary background that includes birds, reptile, and mammal DNA. So this matches the central idea. And again, we're talking about the details in this paragraph, and all of those details support this central idea that they has this rare evolutionary background. So it checks all of our boxes. And with this one, if you understand exactly what you want to look for, something that's broad and that the details support this broad idea, then this question will be much easier. So make sure to go back to these paragraphs, kind of understand what the details are telling you, and see if it connects to the central idea that you wrote down or thought about in your head as well. Okay, now we're going to do question 31, which asks, how can researching the genomes of other animals inform scientists' understanding of human health and disease? So at first, this might look a little bit overwhelming. So we're going to look for keywords that help us. And here it says genomes and human health and disease. Those are kind of the more specific scientific words. And if you look back into the passage, it says in paragraph 11, human health and disease. So that is where I'm going to look. That's kind of a hint. When these kind of more confusing science passages use these fancier words, you want to go back and to the part of the passage that references it specifically, and I would skim it over just to refresh your memory. Okay, answer choice A says tracking how other animals evolved over millions of years helped researchers preserve and sustain nature. So although this is true and it is mentioned in the passage, again, back to the question, it's asking about human health and disease. And this answer choice doesn't talk about how researching the genomes, blah, 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 helps human health and disease. This is talking about nature, which is different. So immediately crossing it off, it's not answering the question. Choice D says finding ways that the animal genomes are similar to the human genome helps researchers find signals that control genes. And I know that those have some technical words and you don't need to understand what all of them say in order to get this question right. We have to look back into the passage to kind of get these key words. And in paragraph 11, it says that finding animal genomes that are similar to the human genome helps researchers locate signals that control how genes work. So that's the same thing here, researching control how genes work, and that it helps treat human disease. So in that paragraph, paragraph 11, it talks about how controlling genes through signals helps human disease. So here we find these keywords, we go back to the passage, and it should be right there, because even though it's tricky, when you use these technical words, they usually have an explanation right in the passage. So go back to the passage. We find that one in paragraph 11. So see if you can find it yourself and kind of underline it. Choice D says observing that all living things evolved from a common ancestor helps research pinpoint certain genetic traits. This isn't necessarily mentioned to help human health and disease in the passage, even though it's true. And so since it doesn't have that direct correlation like we could find for B, then we're not going to choose it. Since we found very specific evidence for B, we're going to, have a preference over that for the ones that we don't have very specific evidence for. Choice D says understanding how other animals are similar to one another helps researchers find new ways to understand the human genome. So again, this does not help us with the question, which is asking how it better understands human health and disease. And since it doesn't necessarily have that direct meaning, then we can usually cross it off. Also, the question is asking us about the genomes of other animals, and this is talking very generally about animals. And so it doesn't match up at all. And plus for B, we have very specific evidence, so we can feel confident crossing that one, crossing off D and choosing B. This question, again, is like similar to the other questions. You have to really look at what it's asking us specifically. So specifically, human health and disease are the keywords, what you're looking for, researching the genomes of other animals, but how that helps human health and disease. And kind of similar to all the questions, we have to really understand what it's asking us, and then we can understand what the answer choice is, even if we don't necessarily understand the fancy words of a science passage, which I know can be difficult at times. But understanding the question and the importance of going back to the passage to find these specific words are extremely important. So make sure that you guys keep doing that. That's all we're going to go over today. I hope you all are staying safe. I miss you guys. And we'll be back next week with another video. Happy New Year. And yeah, thank you for watching.